It's time to make my weekly video. I'm going to talk about conspiracy law because that is the most important thing that I think is going on right now. I'm hearing brain to brain that my conspiracy law has become the supreme law of the United States because I'm the US president, and that it's becoming the supreme law all around the world. And that the Jesuits are claiming in court that I am not the author of conspiracy law, uh, which is absurd. They're saying that I couldn't have the sanity to write something so brilliant that that's working so well. Um, well, let me just show you this. What I decided to do is at my website, I'm posting some of the letters that I wrote to Vladimir Putin in 2003 when I first started. I first started conspiracy law in June 2003. And the reason I did it was because Vladimir was telling me, we started our brain to brain communications in the spring of 2003. And Vladimir was telling me brain to brain that that somebody stole his sperm and impregnated a woman using artificial insemination, and they were now accusing him of being the father. And I knew it was the Jesuits. They love to do this. They love to steal the sperm of their enemies and then use that to impregnate one of their agents and then use that to trap my men or to accuse them of being a rapist or whatever. And I just thought, this is outrageous. I mean, there are no laws about using artificial insemination, using stolen semen. There at that time, there were no laws in the world that said that was a crime. And I thought, that's a crime. Somebody needs to write law to make stuff like that a crime. So that's why I started writing conspiracy law. My original intent when I wrote it was, I said, this is outrageous, Vladimir. And I knew they were doing stuff like this with Brent too, but I didn't know. At that time I thought Lori McBride might have been dead. I wasn't sure, though I knew that they might be using cloning technology to bring her back. I wasn't sure, but so I started. Um, I'm going to put all the letters up, but most of my communication with Vladimir was, he would tell me stuff that was happening to him and what they were trying to do to him, and he would say, I'm stuck. I mean, how can I prove that I am not that I didn't have sex with this woman when she got pregnant? It makes me look bad. And I said, I believe you. He was telling me this all brain to brain. He says, I believe you, Vladimir. I said, this just sounds like the Jesuits. And I said, somebody needs to write law. So the first law I wrote was called Russian reproductive laws, which I later renamed to international reproductive laws. And I wrote the law so that if somebody steals a man's sperm and uses that to impregnate a woman against the man's will, that would be a crime worthy of the death penalty. Because, that's just so unfair to the man's reputation, and it deserves the death penalty. And so that's when I started writing conspiracy law. You might say, but you're not a lawyer. It's true, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm the smartest woman on the planet, according to an IQ test that they ran on me. And the Lord prepared me for this. Let me tell you how. When I was still married to my ex and was thinking of being on my own, I was trying to find a way to support myself. And the first thing that came to my mind was, maybe I could be a real estate agent. So while I was in Washington State and going through divorce proceedings with my ex, I studied for the Washington real estate salesperson's exam. And I passed on the first try. And basically, when you pass these tests, you I signed up with, I think it was what, Century 21. I took their course. You're basically studying law to pass these exams because you need to understand the law around real estate to be a real estate salesperson. So you're basically studying law. I found that I actually enjoyed studying the law. You may say, why didn't you become a real estate agent? Well, my mother actually sent me the money for the course because she thought that was the way I could support myself. Um, Oh, you wouldn't believe how the Jesuits fought me, man. The day that I took the Washington real estate salesperson's exam, I had a stomach bug that the Jesuits gave me. They're horrible. Finally, when I realized how obsessed they were with me, I decided not to go into real estate because I figured if I mean, in the news, it was really funny. While I was studying to be a real estate agent, there were news in Seattle news every day. We were hearing stories about real estate agents who were held, who were being. I'm serious. They were being targeted. They like. I think there was a story of a woman realtor who was showing somebody a home and she got raped or something. I can't remember the exact details, but they were victims of crime. All of a sudden, the Jesuits got really interested in kill. I think she got killed. Yeah, a real estate agent got murdered while she was showing somebody a house, and I thought this isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work, man. I mean, this was happening while I was studying. So I thought, Lord, I guess I wasted my time studying for the Washington State real estate thing because I can't do this. It's too dangerous for me. And they all started all of a sudden when I was studying for the Washington State realtors. All these real estate agents were getting murdered while they were showing people houses. And I thought this just isn't going to work. They're just too obsessed with me. I can't do anything without these Jesuits being obsessed with me. And after the divorce, when I tried to get jobs, it was horrible, man. I mean, the divorce decree set it up that after 2 years, they expected me to have a job that paid at least $9 an hour, and I was expected to pay child support because my ex got custody, even though he's a pedophile. He got custody. Of course, I didn't know he was a pedophile at the time of my divorce, or I would have brought it up. And my son didn't talk about how his own father molested him. I think he was scared. He just figured that his father had power like God, and he didn't want me on this. I think my son felt that if I got custody, that I wouldn't be able to afford him. So he decided to put up with his father. So I think he was scared of his dad. I really do. So he was a victim of my ex molesting him, and I think he was just so scared of his dad. And looking back, I can see now why I wasn't even able to homeschool him. I tried because even at his school, he was being bullied, man. The Jesuits are terrible, man. When they attack you, it's like the tidal wave. They hit you with everything and anything. It's just horrible. But anyways, back onto conspiracy law. So I decided against being a real estate agent. I decided I needed a job that was less risky. Actually, there is no such job. Not if the Jesuits are targeted with you. Not if they're targeting you. But at the time of my divorce, I didn't have any work, so I had to live with my mother. That was very courageous of me to divorce my ex. I did it because Jesus told me. He said, if you don't divorce your husband, you will be dead within a couple of years. He told me that in prayer. So I went ahead and did it. And what gave me the courage was I knew Brent Spiner wanted to marry me at that time. But boy, did the Jesuits use Lori McBride to make sure that didn't happen. Oh, so I came to Florida, and then my mother said she would help me study to be an insurance salesperson. So I thought maybe I could do this. So I studied more law. because to be an health insurance salesperson or selling life insurance and annuities, you got to study more law. I ended up learning quite a bit of law studying for all these, and I passed that one on the first try. And then I got a job at a health insurance place here in Melbourne as a result of that, passing that. But guess what happened? The Jesuits took over the company. And I could tell they took it over because they were I forget, I don't know how I figured it out. That was like 20 years ago. But I could tell they took over the company. I think they were trying to encourage us as agents to not, oh, I remember now. He was trying to tell us as agents to kind of break the law a little bit. I had just studied the law. I can't remember exactly how, but he said, if you're going to make sales, you can't be too picky about following the law. And I thought, wait a minute. I said, the Jesuits have taken over this company. I can't work for this company. I am not going to risk breaking the law to be a sales agent. And I said, Lord, I said, no, I'm not working. I didn't sign the contract to work with them. I said, I can't work for you guys. I didn't tell them that I suspected that they got taken over by Jesuits, but that's what happened to me. Every time I got a job, if I got any job that would pay me something below like a minimum wage job, the Jesuits would take over the company, and I couldn't work there. I said I cannot, in good conscience, work here. So that was it. But my time spent studying law was kind of like mini law school for me, even though it only focused on health insurance and real estate law. But I understood the basics of contract law. I understood a little bit about criminal law. And I got enough legal training from those two, the two salesperson's exams that I took, that I was able to start writing law. I understood contract law very well, because that's very important in being a salesperson, as a real estate salesperson or an insurance salesperson. And I understood insurance law, and so it really helped me as I decided to write conspiracy law. But even though you might say, okay, so I studied real estate. That was 1999, I believe it was. But I've lost my licensure and all that because I haven't kept up with it. And then I passed the insurance, Florida insurance, health insurance, and life and variable annuities exam. I think that was 2001. Yeah. No, that was 2002, summer 2002. But I had to quit that for reasons I've already told you, because they were trying to get me to break the law and trying to say you don't have to. They were advising their salespeople, like, you don't need to be that picky about follow every little nitpicky law, because you're not going to be able to make any sales unless you cut some corners here. And I thought, wait a minute, I can't do this. I can't do this. The Jesuits, they were trying to get me in trouble, so I couldn't work. I was thinking, Lord, how in the world can I get a job without violating my moral standards, I said, these people are terrible. Every place I go, I said, but I know you've got a plan. Eventually, I did get a job at Walmart. Walmart, when I first started working for them, they were not a Jesuit company. In fact, I don't think they're a Jesuit. It's a long, complicated story, but I had 8 good years at Walmart, and they were good, until the Jesuits got the CEO. And then I started having some issues. But anyways, and then the Jesuits used my ex-husband, who was a Jesuit, to cause problems. So back onto conspiracy law. But as a result of learning all that law, I actually learned how to think like a lawyer. And so Vladimir was telling me about all the ways Jesuits were using stolen semen and impregnating women that were their agents, using innocent man's sperm, and then saying, "You're the father. We got proof because look at the baby, the DNA. It's your baby. You did it." And I thought, this isn't fair. Don't they even argue in court that the sperm could have been stolen and used and artificially inseminated into the woman? And he says, no, there are no, Vladimir said, there's no laws about that. They don't have any laws about that. I said, well, somebody needs to write that law. So that's when I started writing conspiracy law. And I would go in there and write the law, and then I would tell him what I just wrote. And then Vladimir would say, well, they're coming back with this argument. They're saying, he would say, well, prove that we did this. How can you prove that we did this artificial insemination and that you didn't have sex with this woman? So I wrote the law where we had to be able to use 21st century technology using like brain memory reads, but that technology does exist. So I worked in the areas of law that had to do with evidence and with contracts and with criminal law. See, the legal system, the way it was back in 2001, where the Jesuits were literally getting away with rape, murder, impersonation, using very sophisticated 21st century technology, the biggest problem I found was in the area of evidence. What was allowed as evidence into the courtroom? And, for Vladimir to prove that he did not have sex with this woman, but that she got impregnated through stolen semen, I had to be able to find some way to be able to introduce evidence to prove that his semen was stolen, that he did not want this woman to get pregnant, that he never had sex with her. So, so in order to improve the law so that we could introduce other forms of evidence, I wrote law to that effect. So I said, we expanded the law so that we could admit as evidence into the courtroom memory reads, emotional reads, and mind reading, which existed. That technology has been in existence for a while. It's very accurate. And I thought it's very important as I write this law that this evidence is accurate and that it's admissible. And so to make it accurate and admissible, the person who conducted the memory read needed to swear under lie detection and also memory reads that the evidence that they were submitting was conducted properly according to the scientific methods that work, so that we know it's an accurate read of this person, of their memories. And so I started writing law to that effect, and I would think of all the angles. Like Vladimir would tell me, okay, we've introduced the evidence and now they're saying this. So I said, and they're claiming it's not admissible because it's not accurate. I said, well, what about, the accuracy? I said, okay, we need to beef up the law so that we can ensure that we can admit this as evidence. And so I would start, so it started with reproductive laws. And then Vladimir would tell me about other problems. Like he would say, we've got illegal immigrants, Jesuits coming into Russia. And I don't want them here. They're causing problems in our country, but they're coming in. I don't know how, he said, and I can't get rid of them. They just keep coming in. So I thought, okay. Then I started writing immigration law. And we were learning as we went about what kind of scientific technology the Jesuits had. And so conspiracy law was written to work in any country's legal system, to work with their ecosystem, but to enhance it so that we could introduce as evidence into the courtroom the 21st century technology that was being used that nobody had written any law about. So I ended up making it illegal to create clones, illegal to steal a man's sperm. And then I had to write law to prove that this had happened. And it ended up that the Jesuits were doing so many horrible things and using so much advanced technology, and we were learning as we went along, and we learned more and more about their technology, that I had to upgrade the law every year to deal with this new technology coming out. And I didn't have a computer when I was right after my divorce. In fact, I only had the stuff that was in my suitcase from Seattle, and I ended up losing a lot of the stuff that I was granted in the divorce because I couldn't afford to move it from Seattle to Florida. But my stepfather gave me a computer in spring of 2003, and it had WordPerfect already installed. And that was great for me because I was used to WordPerfect. And so I used WordPerfect, and I had everything, all my law, I ended up saving on these floppy disks. Because what happened is he gave me a used computer. It was a 1990s computer, I think a 1998 computer. And I used that used computer, which was a free computer he gave me, up until 2010 when it crashed because of surge. I didn't have surge protector on it, and it crashed, and then I had to buy a new computer. And it's a good thing I had all my law backed up on floppy disk. See this? I had everything backed up on floppy disk except for the latest work I had done on Silver Skies. But you know what? That was junk. I'm having to do all that over anyway, because the latest work I did on Silver Skies was no good anyway. But I still had on floppy disk my 1990s version. So even though the computer crashed, because I saved all my law on floppy disk, good thing I did that, I was able to put all that onto the new computer that I bought which was a Windows 7. I think it was it was a Vista. It was a Vista. And then that computer went bad in 2018 or 17, somewhere around there. No, 2015. And then I bought the computer I have now, which is a Windows 10. Actually, it was a Windows 7 when I bought it, and I was able to upgrade it to a 10. So that's, so anyways, conspiracy law, I wrote it. You might say, well, how did you write Vladimir letters back then? Well, we were communicating brain to brain, and Vladimir would tell me everything that was going on, and I had to write law about. I worked at conspiracy law for full-time hours for about 2 years because there was so much going on in Russia. The Jesuits were attacking Vladimir left and right. He was telling me about all the stuff that was happening, and Brent Spiner was in court fighting Laurie McBride too, and Vladimir and I were helping out Brent in court as well. And what would happen is Vladimir had a technology that is, once I got on the computer, he was able to use satellite technology to just, whatever I put on the computer, to get an instant lock onto my computer and to just pull it up on his computer over in Russia. And so that's how he was able to get my conspiracy law even back in 2003. So, yeah. And what I'm doing is I'm right now, including some of the correspondence. I called them legal statements. I would write them on my computer, letting them know, kind of like a journal. I called them Bemerkungen, the German name for legal statements, I'm kind of bad on my German. I was much more up on my German back then. I tried to learn German for Vladimir Putin because he's fluent in German as well as Russian. So Russian was too hard for me, so I stuck with German. So what I'm doing now is publishing the letters that I wrote to Vladimir in 2003 when I first started conspiracy law, to prove to you that I am the author of it. And you can read that at my website. I'll have a link to that underneath this video. But I am the author, and I'm telling you why I wrote it. and why I had enough legal training that I was able to do so. Uh, Basically, I wrote the law because I was helping Vladimir in legal cases. Actually, Vladimir has some training in law. He's trained in law. So he was able to, he would advise me brain to brain, telling me what was going on in the case, what the lawyers on the other side were saying. And I would say, I need to beef up the law a little bit so we can deal with what they're bringing up. And that's what I would do. Some of that stuff is in the letters, which I'm going to publish. It's going to take me a while to publish all the letters that I wrote Vladimir, that he would just pull up right off of my computer in 2003 and afterwards. Before 2003, Vladimir came into my life in 2000, right after 9/11. And before, I would write him letters and put them in a big yellow envelope inside my post office box without a stamp, because at that time I foolishly thought George W. Bush was my friend and that he was secretly giving the stuff to Vladimir using our postal service. And actually, that wasn't happening. So I think Vladimir didn't get what I wrote, or maybe he got a doctored version of what I wrote, but he didn't get what I wrote until 2003, which may be the reason that he came up with brain-to-brain communications. He studied Jesuit technology and figured out a way to borrow their mind-reading technology so that we could transform it into brain-to-brain communications. And the brain-to-brain communications were, I would say, about 95% accurate until the Jesuits started catching up with us, and they found ways to go in there and mess it up and confuse me, so that sometimes I would hear you say, how does brain-to-brain communication? It's like a thought to my mind, you know, where Vladimir will talk to me. But the Jesuits eventually figured out a way to impersonate Vladimir, and so it started getting less and less accurate as they got better at coming in there and causing problems. And by the time Brent Spiner started communicating with me through the internet, which started in 2011, when I started my YouTube channel, Brent Spiner started communicating with me through his own YouTube channel, which he created just to communicate with me. And that's when we started our online communication, me and Brent. And then Vladimir got joined in along with Hugh and Matthew and Gerard Butler. And that resulted in, and then that made the Jesuits really nervous. So they had Laurie McBride really attack Brent when he had the courage to start communicating with me, online. And then we discovered our brain-to-brain, they really attacked our brain-to-brain communication. So, but long story short, Conspiracy Law, I am the author, and I explained to you why I started writing it. And it eventually became the size of an encyclopedia. And the good news is the law is so comprehensive that it can literally replace the Constitution of any country, and that country will work well and efficiently and justly and righteously. And the good news is, well, the bad news is in the United States Constitution is basically a dead document, thanks to the Laurie McBride Jesuits and the Jesuits. The Jesuit order has been obsessed with world dominion since their creation. Their goal, when they were originally created under Loyola, was to use was to be like the military of the Catholic Church, or the militia. And they would put their agents worldwide throughout the whole world in order to take over the world for Roman Catholicism. That was the original goal. And Satan was using the Jesuits as his bride. Yeah. Jesus Christ has a bride. Jesus Christ's bride is the genuine Bible-believing church, most of whom reside in evangelical Christianity, though there are some genuine believers in the Roman Catholic Church and other churches, but most true Jesus followers are in the evangelical community. Satan has a bride. Satan's bride has been Babylon the Great. condemned in Revelation 17 and 18. And that has evolved into different forms. It started off as the Tower of Babel, and that became a religious system that involved like the worship of a Mary or a woman, a child. Oh, anyways, and then that religious system evolved into the Catholic Church. Oh, she's dropping bombs, that horrible woman. Oh, I'll get some water. Anyways, the Jesuit order became the bride. Her bombs are terrible. Lord, those are the bombs. Yeah, I'm allergic to yeast toxin. She drops bombs over my head that are filled with yeast, and that's what makes me cough. Oh, anyways, the Jesuit order has been the bride, Satan's bride. I would call it the false church, and they ended up acquiring, because they infiltrate governments all over the world. They ended up acquiring, and also because they meet with Satan and participate in devil worship, they have UFO technology, which they make sure is never reported on in the news. And so I decided to write law. And I believe that most of the amendments to the Constitution were written by Jesuits in order to destroy the United States. You see, the Jesuits have found the United States to be a major threat to their goal for a world takeover. And the United States Constitution, in fact, Jack Chick, who's with the Lord right now, I agree with a lot of his books, even though I'm not a King James only person like he was. But I agree with him that Satan, the Jesuit order, they're Satan worshipers. I mean, when we would invade their services, they would be sacrificing like Zack Knight clones on the altar to Satan. Yeah. And say, oh, hail Satan, you are our God. I'm not kidding you, man. The Jesuit order is Satan's bride. And Satan literally meets with Lori McBride at least once a week. And that's the reason we haven't been able to take her down. She has antichrist or false prophet powers, and we cannot kill her. She's got immortality. And I believe she's not going to lose that till she loses her following. Started with Zack Knight. You know, conspiracy law was written to defeat the Jesuits. That's why I wrote it. And I had to deal with the UFO technology. And it does deal with it. And the law is now, what I hear, it's the supreme law in the United States, and I'm basically saving the United States from a Lori McBride takeover. Or should I say an evil Jesuit takeover. Lori McBride has totally taken over the Democratic Party. She has agents inside the deep state Republican Party, and she's the reason that we have this COVID-19 problem right now. She's the reason that our economy would be going into the Great Depression if not for me and my conspiracy law. I'm basically saving the world from going into the Great Depression. Lori is working with Satan, trying to get everybody super poor so she can control them. And I'm stopping that. So I'm saving the world with my conspiracy law. Conspiracy law is designed so that we can arrest Jesuits and take them out, because that's the only way we're going to have peace in this world. Because Jesuits have a divide and conquer strategy where they go in there, they infiltrate, they cause anarchy, they create coups, inside of every country. They orchestrate rebellions in order to overthrow the legitimate government and replace it with their dictator, who is usually a version of like Hitler or Stalin. And I'm stopping that. My conspiracy law has become the supreme law. And the way it works is it works with the U.S. Constitution and any law that's in existence in the country that does not contravene conspiracy law. So the way conspiracy law works is it replaces any law that goes against it in that country. So let's say there is a conflict between conspiracy law and one of the amendments to the U.S. Constitution. If conspiracy law is the supreme law, it means that my conspiracy law overrides that law. And that's what we got, and that's what we need right now. Because the Jesuits have written a lot of law that is bad law, that makes it easy for them to commit crimes and get away with it. In fact, I believe most of the amendments to the Constitution, especially the ones after the Bill of Rights, are Jesuit law, designed to help the Jesuits to take over the United States. And so my conspiracy law, you might say, well, and part of the problem is the way the laws have been interpreted by the Supreme Court, too. Like the law that took the Bible out of the public schools in the 1960s, that law, that Supreme Court decision actually violated the Constitution. It was based on some law that was an incorrect interpretation of something Thomas Jefferson wrote, something that was taken out of context and that had no precedent. Usually when a Supreme Court jurist makes a decision, they base it on precedent in the law. That means on previous rulings in the law. The problem is, in the early 1960s, there was no precedent that would justify them taking prayer out of the schools and so forth. They only had one, and that was a 1947 law that in it itself was illegal. This was all Jesuit chicanery going in there. So basically, the Jesuits have totally messed up the American legal system from about 1947 forward. And what's really ironic is the person who introduced this law, which was the basis, the 1947 law, that was the basis for the Supreme Court decision that was passed around 1963 or 64 that forbade prayer and Bible in the public schools. The person who introduced this was a white supremacist. He was a KKK member. Yeah, and that's what's so funny about it, is that all of these people that are claiming that they're against racism and they're against white supremacy, the law that they use to justify what they do was taken from somebody who was a KKK member and a white supremacist. I'll have a link for that underneath this video. But anyways, the point is, we've come to the conclusion that in order for there to be true justice in the United States, my conspiracy law needs to be the supreme law of the land. So, and I hear that's what's happened. Oh, Lori McBride is fuming mad because she's been using all this corrupt law that the Jesuits have introduced into the United States, where they've overridden the U.S. Constitution. Basically, the Constitution's a dead document, thanks to the Jesuits and their lawyers and their judges. So my law, which I wrote because I'm the smartest woman on the planet and I've had a little bit of legal training, and I've been corresponding with Vladimir Putin, who's trained in law. Now, from what I understand, from what I'm hearing brain to brain, in order to save the United States from a Jesuit takeover, they have made my conspiracy law the supreme law of the land. And I'm going to be providing proof that I am the author at my website by publishing the letters that I wrote to Vladimir Putin. I called them this. I have them on floppy disk. I wrote these in 2003, but I transferred them all to my current computer. And I'm going to be publishing some of those letters to prove that I am the author of Conspiracy Law. My law works in the courtroom brilliantly and helps us to prosecute, arrest, and execute Jesuits who are considered war criminals under conspiracy law. They are war criminals. Did you know that Adolf Hitler was a devout Jesuit? Yep. And they also believe that Jesuits may have been involved in Stalin. They think there was some Jesuit contamination in Russia at the time when the monarchy was overthrown. Jesuits are always behind every rebellion in history, like in the past 500 years of every country. They're usually involved in just about all the rebellions against a monarchy or a government that is not a dictatorship or not a communist country. I'm not saying it's a little bit more complex than that, but usually if there's anarchy and rebellion in a country and it's been the past 500 years, you can blame it on the Jesuits. That's how they take over. And they're trying that right now in the United States. So, and they're very clever in the way they do it. They usually find a political organization within the country that they line themselves up with. And right now, the evil Jesuits have pretty much lined up with mainstream politics, both Republican and Democrat. Basically, they're lined up with the war machine. So if there's any politician that is part of the war machine, they call it the military-industrial complex, those are the Jesuits. The Jesuits love war. That's the only way they can take over. They think it's their job to build God's kingdom on earth now through the Catholic Church. And the Jesuit, as I told you, is the military of the Roman Catholic Church. Of course, they don't advertise this, but there's a book called Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmund Paris, an author they murdered, by the way, that goes all into it. Like I told you, the Jesuits are Satan's bride. So they've really corrupted the law all over the world and just about every country. So the only way to deal with it now is my conspiracy law needs to be the supreme law of every land. And I hear that's happening. We had a really fierce space battle a couple days ago. It gave me a horrible headache. And because of all the nuclear fallout and everything, all over the place. And I just cut my hair, as you can see. But we're winning. The world doesn't like it when people like Laurie McBride start running their country, because Laurie McBride is very selfish. She doesn't care about the people underneath her. She's arrogant, and the only thing she's good at doing is setting fires, causing rebellion, causing anarchy, and stealing everybody's money and putting the nation into dire poverty. The Jesuits can't take over a class if that country has a strong middle class. They can't take over a country if that country has a strong middle class. So they've got to destroy the middle class. And my conspiracy law is designed to save the middle class and to prevent Jesuits from destroying the country. Let me tell you what I think is going on. This is kind of exciting, and I'm going to have to end because I've been going on and on. But I'm going to have links underneath this video to prove that I am the author of Conspiracy Law, where I'm going to be publishing the letters that I wrote to Vladimir Putin as I was writing the law. And I believe that the law, it's really funny because back in 2012, when the Jesuits and I had to band together to defeat the Gail android, we signed a treaty. And part of the deal that the Jesuits made with us is that we were not allowed to enforce conspiracy law. The Jesuits knew I wrote conspiracy law to defeat them. So part of the peace treaty, when we banded together to defeat the Jesuits, was I was not allowed to use conspiracy law. And that worked good, but then after we defeated the Gail android, I wanted to quit the treaty because Zach Knight was claiming that I wanted him and all this. And back then I didn't want him. And we were fighting him in court, but we weren't allowed to use conspiracy law, and it got so frustrating. And one time I just said, we're going to make conspiracy law back. And Jesus said, oh, he said, I got to say to you, Zach Knight's about to come in and destroy you, Gail, because you broke your word. Jesus said, I know he's the Antichrist. I know that just about everything he does is wrong. But he said, because you're on my side, and because when you're on my side, if you promise somebody and you give your word about something, you gave your word, you wouldn't use conspiracy law. You broke your word, and I can't side with you, Gail. And if Zach Knight comes in here and he destroys you and your men, I'm not going to stop it because I have to be true to who I am. And I said, okay, G. He said, but there's a way you can fix this, Gail. Go public, go make a video, apologize to Zach Knight and the Jesuits that you broke your word, and say that conspiracy law is no longer in force. So I did that, and then Zach Knight saw the video and he changed his mind and decided not to do this. Later, I asked Jesus about this. Jesus said, you're not going to understand the scale. And I know it doesn't make any sense, but he told us because you're not able to use conspiracy law, this was in 2013, it's going to actually strengthen your conspiracy law. And it didn't make any sense to me. And finally, at the end of 2013, a court decided that conspiracy law could be reinstated and used again in the courtroom. And I looked back and I thought, I don't see how conspiracy law has been strengthened. I mean, it came back and we were able to we had a little bit more that we could use against the Jesuits in court, but the Jesuits got really clever ways of outmaneuvering conspiracy law. One of their most clever things that they did was they just act like the law doesn't exist, and they would just use standard Jesuit law. Basically, nowadays any law that isn't conspiracy law is Jesuit law. The Jesuits are that good legally. And it didn't seem like, I would look to Jesus, it doesn't seem like conspiracy law got strengthened. It's like the same as it was before we weren't able to use it. Then I just thought of something. Jesus often looks ahead 10 or 20 years down the road when he says something. You know why conspiracy law was strengthened? Because I honored my treaty with Zach Knight. It was strengthened because Zach Knight decided to defect from the evil Jesuit order and come to my side. And so we got at least half of the Jesuits became Church of Gail members when I led Zach Knight to the Lord. The reason conspiracy law was strengthened is because we got half of the Jesuit order onto my side. We were able to lead them all to Jesus. And now, basically, that's why it was strengthened. If I had violated my treaty, in other words, first of all, I and my men wouldn't be here. We'd probably be all goners because Jesus already told me what would happen. But Zach Knight never would have got saved. He would have said, phooeyes, I don't care what that Gail says. She breaks her word. I'll never become one of her followers. But because I kept my word, even when it hurt me, that made an impression on Zach Knight. And so later, when one of his own followers, Angelina Ballerina, betrayed him and tried to kill the woman he would die for and lied to him and said she loved him when she didn't, I was able to lead Zach Knight to the Lord because he knew that I was a woman who kept my word, whereas one of his own followers didn't. She was a betrayer, a treacherous liar, and Benedict Arnold among his own troops. That's how conspiracy law was strengthened, because we were able to get Zach Knight to our side. So now Jesus, you were right. That's what Jesus meant. And now, Jesus is literally letting Lori McBride hang herself. I can see his plan. Lori McBride has made such a mess. She's infiltrated the legal system of the United States and all over the world. And she's the reason we're dealing with COVID-19 right now. She's the reason people are losing their jobs. She has made such a stinking mess that when I offered to the United States to make my conspiracy law the supreme law of the land so that we can get our economy back, so that we can deal with all this mess she's created, everybody says, yes, yes, we'll do it. The world is so desperate right now because Lori McBride has made such a stinking mess of things that I believe right now 80% of the world has made my conspiracy law the supreme law of the land, which means that any of their existing laws will be overridden by my conspiracy law. This is what happens to the Jesuits a lot. When the people in the country figure out that the reason they're having all these problems is because of the Jesuits, they want to kick them out. And that's what's going on. The whole world wants to kick out the Lori McBride Jesuits because they're getting sick of them. They're ready to vomit them out, man. And you might say, well, how come you only have 80%? Well, the only people that follow Lori McBride are those who are filthy rich and they don't want to lose their riches or their power. Okay? But people that are poor or middle class or rich people that have moral standards, they're sick of her, man. And the whole world, people that want their freedom, that want to keep their morals, they're voting for my conspiracy law to be the supreme law of the land. You may say, well, which countries have not followed through? Well, we're having problems with Israel and I think the European Union. But I think they're going to come around eventually. I don't think their leaders represent their people, though. And we just had a battle with them. And from what I understand is they attacked us first and we had to defend ourselves. And we've just laid the law down with them. And we said, we will attack you again if you don't have elections conducted according to conspiracy law and vote in new leaders who will honor conspiracy law. So I think eventually my law is going to be international. And then the Lord Jesus will probably use me to bring in a type of the 1,000-year reign. That's what I think. You know, the Lord gave me a song back in 1992. I came back from the funeral of a little girl, and this was right after Brent gave me 3 weeks of silence when Lori McBride drug raped him while he was filming during a fistful of datas. There's a place for us, somewhere a place for us, peace and quiet and open air, wait for us somewhere. I heard that song, and it was like the Lord was saying, Gail, someday you're going to be with Brent, and the world's going to be at peace. He said, I'm going to make it happen. I think we're going in that direction, folks. The Lord Jesus is letting Lori McBride hang herself so that everybody in the world hates her now. They all want my conspiracy law. They want to kick her and her Jesuits out of the country so that they can have peace and quiet and so they don't lose their jobs, so that they don't have to be in lockdown mode over insanity. And yep, my conspiracy law, I predict within a year, maybe sooner, is going to be the supreme law over the whole earth. And the Lord is going to use me, his King David woman, to bring in a type of his future 1,000-year reign. That's what I think. And that'll be what God promised, that I'd marry Brent on this earth. So I think it's really close. Anyways, check out the links. I am the author of Conspiracy Law, by the way. I wrote it all myself. Vladimir just gave me intelligence information about what the Jesuits were up to, but he didn't write it. I wrote it. I wrote it. I'm the author. Though Vladimir helped me by letting me know what the Jesuits were up to so I'd know what kind of law I needed to write. Anyways, this video's gone on for a long time, but I'm going to have proof that I'm the author underneath this video by publishing the letters that I wrote to Vladimir, which he just pulled right up off of my computer using satellite technology. And I'm really excited. I think we are very, very close to the point where my conspiracy law, see, I saved it all on these discs, and then I put it, and then I've added to it too. So I started on it in June 2003, and I just added to it and added to it and added to it every year till now. And it's become the size of an encyclopedia. There's enough law there that any country and any type of government can use it, and it will help the government to run efficiently, justly, smoothly, giving the people maximum freedom, and basically removing the Jesuit order, the evil Jesuits. Zach Knight is now a good Jesuit, but removing the evil Jesuits would be like taking a cancer out of planet Earth. And it's going to make the governments healthy again, just again. And the people will be more free. And I believe this law that I've written may very possibly be the best law that's ever been written in all the history of the human race. And I believe that the Lord may use it to bring in a type of his future millennial reign. You might say, that doesn't seem to go along with Bible prophecy. Well, I'm the Zechariah 9:15 woman. I believe that prophecy is going to have multiple fulfillments, one in the church age. I believe that what the Lord is going to do is he's going to allow a type of his millennial reign right before the rapture of the church, in order to give this world one last chance to accept him as their savior before he allows Satan to unleash the horrific 7-year tribulation described in the books of Daniel and Revelation. And he's using me as that instrument to bring that about. The King David woman. My genetic profile is a miracle in itself, so I'm all part of his plan. He's going to use me and my men to bring about a type of his millennial reign. Basically, he's telling the world, hey, the way Gail is ruling the world through her conspiracy law is kind of similar to how I'm going to do it in the millennium. You like it? Then follow me. And then when that set number of people get saved, then the rapture is going to happen. And I'm going to be out of here along with my men and the church saints. And then Satan is going to bring back somebody that's like Laurie McBride or Angelina Ballerina, except he'll be a man. And it's going to be hell on wheels. I won't be here. But the tribulation saints will have my videos. They'll have my books. And my Gail Shield obviously won't be here, so it's going to be a bad time. If you don't want to go there, you need to accept Jesus. I better sign off for now, but I am the author of the Conspiracy Law, and I believe that it is the supreme law in the United States, Russia, and China right now, and that the other nations, I think eventually it's going to be international. And then we're going to have a type of the millennium. It's going to be awesome. Yep. And some people might even think that because of this, there will be no rapture and there'll be no tribulation, but no. There will be, because there will be a rapture. So, but I'm the author of Conspiracy Law. I think the Lord's going to use it to bring in a type of the millennium. You may say, well, it says in the last days, perilous times shall come. Well, you got to understand, for the Lord, 1 day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is 1 day. So he might allow an interval of about 10 years of peace before the tribulation starts. He might. I don't know. We'll find out.